Okay, welcome to the forging portion of this class. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking some 1/4-inch diameter rod and we're going to be forging a screwdriver tip out of this material. Okay, so it's 1/4-inch. This is otherwise known as drill rod. So this is oil hardening drill rod. 01 is the alloy, and so it's oil hardening drill rod. It is in the spheroidized annealed condition. So in other words, we can actually take this and cut it with a saw, but later on we can make it so hard that it's about the same hardness of that saw. So what we're going to do now is the first step is to measure out 4 inches of this material, because we're going to make our screwdriver blade is going to be about 4 inches long. Then we're going to thread this end, and we're going to forge that end, and then we're going to heat treat it. So there's some final grinding that occurs at the end, and because you probably haven't taken the grinding video yet, we'll have to do that later on to get that knowledge. So let's start. There is a hacksaw here. So I'm going to walk over here and over by, there's a vise over here. One thing we're not going to do is to leave anything hanging out of the vise so that people could hit it. So I'm going to put it in the vise with a little bit more than 4 inches hanging out. Okay. We need to mark this so we can get a tape measure. And we're going to try to stay in the area that's designated to you because of the COVID situation. There'll be some people here welding, and so we want to stay away from them. And we're going to come over here to the tools, and we're going to look for tape measures. So we'll grab a tape measure out of here. Okay, we're going to put this back when we're done. And we're going to measure off 4 inches on here. Okay. I'm going to take the hacksaw. I'm just going to put it onto the surface right at 4 inches. This is not super critical that you get it exact. Don't saw the tape measure. You can take and put your thumbnail and your thumb just right next to the blade, and then we're going to pull backwards on this. So, and then it should only take a few strokes. If you want to lubricate it, you can. We'll put some lubricant out for you. This would be a drop of oil on it. Okay, as we're getting close to the end, you hear the frequency change. Once you hear the frequency change like that, you can probably just break the rest of it off. Okay, so now we have our 4-inch long rod. We need to taper this end in order to be able to put a thread on it. And because you don't know how to use the grinder yet, we're going to do that with a file. So take this out of the vise. We're going to put that back where we found it in a second. And I'm going to take a file and I'm going to file the end of this so that it's tapered, so that when we start threading, it makes it a lot easier. Okay, this part is a little bit tricky in that because I have a file, I'm going to try to make this a cone shape, but I have to kind of do it evenly all the way around it. Okay, so what we're going to do is going to use the file. If you can see that well. And I'm going to put a slight angle on that and go around it. Maybe I'm going to file on the end slightly to get it squared up. Okay. And then I can kind of file on the edge of it. And I can kind of, I want to file it pretty far back actually. Now there's two vices on this bench, so you'll be able to, two people will be able to do this at once. So once I file a little bit on that side, I'm just going to move it maybe 30 degrees or so. File it some more. And I can kind of move it around a little bit. Okay. And it's starting to show some signs of tapering on the end. And I'm going to do that the rest of the way around. Okay, so now our end of the rod is properly tapered. Okay, and we're going to thread this. Now, we want to thread about 3/4 of an inch on here, and it's really important that you don't do too much more than that, because otherwise your threads will bottom out in the hole that you're going to create in your screwdriver. So I'm going to get at 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to measure that. Okay, then I'm going to put a little file mark where to stop, and so we're going to stop a little bit before that. Okay, I'm going to put this in vertically into the vise now, and we are going to start threading. So I'm going to use a die to thread this, and we are going to need some lubricant on that die. If it goes really hard, what's going to happen is our die is dull. Okay, and it's super important that you start this straight. So besides setting this thing in the lathe, you just have to eye it up. Okay, so now we have our rod in the vise. I've got my magic cutting fluid. It's called Tap Magic. I'm going to put like a drop or two of oil on that, on the end of the rod, and then I'm going to use my die and the die holder, okay, or die set. Okay, so this has one side is kind of like open more than the other side, so I got to be careful that the die was put in there correctly. And then I'm going to put it on top, and here's the very, very hard part. I'm going to push down really hard, and I'm just going to rotate my body around. Okay, and I'm going to feel that kind of like climb onto the part. So I just got to push down real tight, real tight, real tight, and then rotate it. And all the while trying to make sure it's level. Okay, so after about 2 or 3 turns like this, it's kind of like you kind of have to get down and look at it and make sure that it's level. Otherwise your screwdriver is going to be on an angle. So now I'm going to put a little bit more lubricant on here. I'm going to go a little bit, I'm going to back it up, and you see it's climbing on really nicely. You'll be able to tell if you got it crooked because the threads will get bigger and, you know, kind of deeper on one side and shallower on the other side. I think I have it relatively straight. If you need help with this part, you know, I can kind of eye it up maybe and see if you're going good. So every once in a while, put a little bit of oil on this, and you got to back it up every couple turns. And now we're paying attention now to where that end point is on this. Okay, so you might have to take it out of the vise to even see it, but like a couple turns and then back. And what you'll see is little chips are coming off the bottom. They're being created by this die, okay? And when you go backwards, you can see them, they fall out then. Okay, I think that's about it. And we're going to back it all the way up. And let's see how good a job I did. Well, it's a little bit crooked, but it's not terrible. The other thing you can do is you can very carefully straighten this out, and let me help you with that. Before you do the heat treatment, you could do that. You could straighten this out somewhat, straighten the threads out, and that's probably good right there. So that's pretty straight. Okay, now what do? I'm going to forge this end so that it looks like a screwdriver blade. So I guess what I would do is make sure that you know what a screwdriver blade looks like. Okay, so what we have here is a normal screwdriver blade, and you can see it has some angles on it. This is what you're going for. Now, you're not going to get it perfect forging. As long as it's a little wider than this, we can grind the shape into it, okay? So, so next thing we're going to do here is make the tip of this look like this, okay? Okay, so well, how do we do that? So there should be a torch sitting here on the counter here. This is a flame. This table here is made out of heat-resistant brick. So we're going to make sure that anything we set down, we're going to set it down, and I have a special brick there. That's where we're going to set anything hot. Okay. And we're going to wear gloves. We're going to wear a green jacket, and you're going to wear a face shield. Okay. So let me put those on. Okay, so in here, in this back closet here is the green jackets. With the COVID situation, once you wear a jacket, you're going to put it into a quarantine area for a week so that no one else uses that particular jacket for a week, okay? And then the gloves, you're going to be wearing gloves on the inside of the gloves, and therefore we should have no problem with contaminating the gloves, but they're up at the top here. So make sure that you put them away nicely, better than the way you found it, and come over here, and then we're going to start to forge. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn on this torch here. The way you turn this torch on is you pull the trigger, make sure it lights, because you can pull it and it might not light. You pull it and you push that button which holds the torch on. Okay, so now we're going to set that here very carefully, and we're going to use, of course, our gloves. Okay, we're going to use the tongs. So we're going to grab the rod with the tongs kind of at the back of them. So just the threaded portion is in the jaws of the tongs. And then we're going to put it in the flame until it gets red hot. Now we want to put it just about where the edge of the light blue is, okay? So we're going to hold it in there a while until it gets red hot. Now it needs to be red hot, like, you know, not melting, but it's going to take a little while to heat up. So keep it in there until it's nice and red hot. And you want to kind of move it back and forth a little bit to get more than just the very tip of it red hot. So it's getting there. Now we used to use the acetylene torch, but the acetylene torch, you could make this thing so hot that it actually melts. This one, it's a little bit more challenging to get it that hot. Okay, that's pretty much ready to roll. Okay, we're going to take that over to the anvil, and we're going to set it on the edge of the anvil and I'm going to hit it. Now, it got cold really quick. And I don't know if you noticed that when I hit it, I'm holding it on an angle to the anvil, and I'm hitting it, and this rod is bisecting the angle. The hammer is on an angle, and the anvil's on an angle, and so I'm making a flat that is flat on both sides instead of just on one side. Okay? So the second time you heat it, it should go a little faster, just because it's been heated once before. A little tricky keeping it in there if you got shaky hands. So you might have to do this like, I don't know, 2 or 3 times. Always hitting it in the same spot. Okay, so you can see that it's got some flat on it now, and that it's the same on both sides. Okay? And as it gets thinner, it heats faster because there's more surface area, and we just keep doing this until we have enough material that we can grind the rest of the way to our nice edge, or a nice screwdriver shape. At the very end, we're going to straighten this thing out so that your screwdriver is straight. Never ever hit it when it's not red hot. It will crack probably. And then you'll want another screwdriver blade, which you probably aren't going to have time to do. Okay, it's still a little bit red. I'm going to straighten it a little bit. Okay, probably one more time here, so it really only takes, you know, 3 or 4 times, I guess. And I'm going to be moving it back and forth. It should heat a lot faster now. But I should have enough material to make a pretty cool screwdriver. Think about what kind of screwdriver shape you want, what you use the most at home, and that's the kind you want to make. Okay. Okay, and that's plenty. I'm going to do one more heat to straighten it out, because I can see it's a little crooked. And the way you straighten it is you put the high side up and you give it a tap, and it should straighten it out. Again, if you're having trouble with some of these operations, I'll be loitering around and I can give you a hand. So put the high spot up, and then you look at it. Nope, not quite yet. And that's good. Okay. So there is our screwdriver blade, and now we're going to heat treat it, okay? So it's pretty much ready to go. In order to heat treat it, we've got to put a wire around here in order to be able to get it out of the furnace quickly. And then the heat treatment furnace, which is right over here, this one here, we will use, it's at 1600 degrees, needs to be in there for 20 minutes. Okay, and then we're going to take it out of this furnace. We're going to quench it in the oil down below here. And then after that, we're going to go over to this furnace, which is at 700 degrees. And we're going to put those in there for a while. In fact, so what I'd like you to do is make sure that someone is opening this furnace with you. Okay? You're going to have to push on this lever here. You pull this lever back. Okay? And then push down on it, like this. Now it's really hot inside. You can see that. I'm going to put this in here. Okay, and so let's say there's 3 of you. You want to lay these out so you know whose is whose, and you don't want it right in the front. You want it about halfway back there. Okay? And then close it up once all three of you guys have, 3 or 4 of you have your sample, your screwdriver in there. Now, when you quench these, someone's going to open the door very quickly. You grab your thing, and it's going to go down into the oil. Okay, you're going to swish it around so it cools down, cools down, cools down. And then you're going to lift it up and let it drip for a long time, so all the oil's off of it. And then we could put it on like a paper plate or something that's going to absorb that. Make sure it's not like 700 degrees or something like that, so that it starts the paper plate on fire. The idea is that we don't get oil all over the place. But the main thing is that you let it drip. And then the next person, furnace opens quickly, take it out, furnace closes quickly, and again, you have about a second to get it into the oil. If you delay, what's going to happen is the part's going to get too cold, and then the heat treatment won't do anything. You know, don't freak out. You got about, 1 or 2 seconds coming from here, go straight in here, wiggle around, wiggle around, wiggle around. Don't do it too violently. It might come off the end of the hook. The hook has got kind of a little loop on it, but it can actually, come out. So if you drop it in there, it's not the end of the world. You can kind of fish it out. But the reason why we move it around is that keeps it cooling. If you just put it in there, you get a vapor bubble. Basically, the oil vaporizes right around it because it's so hot, and we have to move it around in order to get rid of that vapor bubble. Okay. We're going to wait for 20 minutes now. Okay, it's been 20 minutes now. We're going to take it and we're going to quench this in the oil. So I'm doing this myself, but if there's 3 of them in here, you'd have to have someone close this furnace very quickly afterwards. Okay, so open up the furnace. Okay, down in there, and then move it around, move it around, move it around, move it around. I don't know if you saw that. So it's in the oil, I'm moving around. There was a little bit of smoke at first, but after about 15-20 seconds, it's probably the same temperature as the oil. Now I'm going to let it sit here and drip for a while. I don't need that on. Don't turn that off yourself. That's just that's the Kyle thing. Okay, so I'm going to let it drip, and then I'm going to put my plate. And then at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to okay, so at this point I have the screwdriver blank all heat treated. It's been hardened, but it's not been tempered. The tempering, what it does is, right now it's very hard. If I would actually put that in a vise and hit it with a hammer, it would just snap very, very quickly. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to temper it. I don't really have to do anything to it besides I have my bunny ears, so I know how to identify my part. If you felt so inclined, we could put a little, I don't know, a piece of sheet metal on there and put a little hole in the piece of sheet metal and then put your name on it by stamping it or something. That would take a little while. You just got to have something that identifies it as yours so other people don't mistake it as theirs. Okay? So now I'm going to put it in the other furnace and temper it. Okay, now we're ready for tempering. It's probably pretty close to the end of class, so we're going to have to coordinate on how you're going to get this back. But you take a picture of what your little screwdriver wire looks like, and then once all the oil's done, we're going to put it in this furnace over here and let it temper. Okay, there'll probably be some more ones in there, maybe 8 of them or so. So it is important that you make something very distinct to make sure that you're going to get yours back. What we've done in the past is we put them in a box, and then the next time you come into class, you pick yours up and put it in your locker. Okay? So don't forget that, though. You don't want to have to do it twice. Okay, so that's pretty much the whole story on put everything back the way you found it. You know, if this paper plate's kind of really nasty, we can throw that out at this point. And then put the tongs away over here in the bucket. The hammer goes away, unless there's a class right afterwards. Okay? So that's how you do the forging portion. After it's been tempered, what you're going to do is grind it, but that operation won't take place until the machining lab, which is the very end of the semester. So you're going to have to hang on to this thing and not lose it till the end of the semester. You put it in your locker, lock it up. Okay. Stay tuned for other exciting adventures in metals.